My name is Dr. Doernte. Almost without a doubt that as we age, we're going to have a lot of muscle degradation. You should stay where you're at, work your way up until you are up where you are doing those bigger, heavier sets. Our brain is very smart. Our body is very stupid. You're going to be able to recruit those bigger fibers quicker. When you go in there, it's like, my shoulder really hurts. Maybe I should take off today. And you're like, I don't want to take off today. I like going to the gym. My name is Dr. Doernte. I'm going to be speaking on unlocking vitality, the role of lifting speed in sustaining power and sustaining strength as we age. Quick background. I'm a professor of exercise science in West Texas at A&M University. I'm also the director of the Human Performance Research Laboratory there. I have a plethora of degrees: business management, psychology of pre-med. I was paramedicine and paramedic emergency management. I have a bachelor's also in wellness and health management, a master's in ex-phys, a doctorate in interdisciplinary health science and ex-phys. Most of my research, I work with emergency and tactical rescue methodology. I do a lot of work with CPR and the AHA. I also work on some new fiber characteristics for your muscle typing, a lot of tensiomyography work. Virtual reality, we started delving into that to see how it changes metabolics and perception. And we do a lot of metabolic and body compositions. I've got quite a few publications on that. Also just recently authored a new textbook, Muscle University, In-Depth Guide to Ex-Phys and Strength and Conditioning. All right, so quick introduction. Effects of aging on muscle. Pretty much it's accepted almost without a doubt that as we age, we're going to have a lot of muscle degradation. There's even a term for it. We use the word sarcopenia, and that's just gradual loss of muscle from aging. You also have a lot of atrophy. Your muscles will slowly shrink over time, and aging is a big problem in diminishing those muscles, especially in size. Along with the muscle size differential, you're also going to have a loss of strength. All this is going to be very impactful going throughout aging because it's going to affect your ability to maintain that independence, along with just the ability to do things that you're used to doing. Along with the loss of the independence is just the general loss of vitality. One of the bigger problems is people are used to being able to function by themselves and take care of themselves, and as they start to lose that ability to create the muscular strength to do daily living tasks, they start to let other things go, and they start to just have a general decline in overall health. So there's a general question of what if aging doesn't mean you have to become weaker? And what if one of the ways that you could continue to create this strength is just lifting speed? So what if lifting speed could be the key to increasing vitality as you age? All right. Quick background. A bunch of you are probably very familiar, but just quick background anyhow. We generally have two types of muscle fibers. There's, different books are publishing that there's lots of different hybrids and things, but there's two accepted types of muscle fibers. And among that, there's two subtypes with muscle type 2. Type 1 is a slow oxidative muscle. This muscle is our endurance muscle, our daily activity muscle. This is the guys that helps you just walk, maintain balance, maintain structure. It's very low contractility, very low strength. It's generally your small, weak muscle, but it lasts a long time. Type 2 muscle is that big, strong powerhouse. He does all those performance enhancements. He does all of those big lifts. He does all of the power bursts. And he's the guy that will keep you going powerfully, but he's very low endurance. He gives up easy. He gets tired easy. Unfortunately, as we age, that big powerhouse muscle becomes even more important because while getting out of a seat or something simple is very, very easy when you're young, getting up and standing up for an elderly person can be a maximal effort. That is a power exercise. That's why they, if you remember like your elderly grandmas and stuff, they get up, they're tired. Because that was all their type 2 power muscles. It's no longer an endurance effort just to stand up. All right, so how does aging affect musculature? Well, unfortunately, when we start to age, type 2 muscle is going to atrophy, lose its strength, lose its power, and it's going to decline by as much as 40%. So all those power musculatures, I mean, we're going to lose about half of that. Type 1 muscle, on the other hand, as far as we can tell, virtually unchanged. So these endurance muscles, these walking muscles, these long-term oxidative muscles, nothing really affects them. It's only our strength and our power that we're going to lose. So there's a common misconception to aging that we're going to have an inevitability that we're going to lose that strength and power. It's just going to happen. Getting old sucks, just kind of got to deal with it. It doesn't have to be that way necessarily, though. If you notice throughout my slides, I've got a whole lot of elderly people on the side that are rather jacked in their ages. You know, we're talking 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years old. The first guy, I believe, was Dr. Liff. So we need this strength. What's some of the big benefits? Muscular strength, endurance, power. The ability just to continue to do things that you're used to doing as you get older requires you to have that strength and that power that you're used to having when you're younger. Being able to carry the laundry, being able to, go to the gym, being able to do all the activities that you like to do requires you maintaining that muscular strength. Bone mineral density and connective tissue remodeling. Another thing that's said to be almost inevitable is as we age, our bones get weaker. If you work in the medical field and you work in the hospital, the number one thing everybody's concerned about is a fall risk. You break a bone, you break your hip, that can be fatal. Your bones don't have to become that soft. They become that soft because there's no reason for them not to. Same thing with tendons and tissues. Our body is very conservative. It likes to have that use it or lose it kind of principle. If you're not making it do these extra things, it's not going to waste the calories preserving them. Our bones require force. They require them to be bent to be able to be strengthened. BMR, basically our metabolism. Muscle's expensive. It costs a lot of calories, generally around 200 calories a day for every pound of dry lean muscle. If we don't need that muscle, we're not going to maintain it. We're just going to go ahead and get rid of it. And if we get rid of it, our metabolism's going to drop, which means we're going to start gaining more fat, assuming we're eating the same amount of calories, because we don't have the muscle that's going to consume those calories anymore. Growth hormone, blood glucose regulation, all of these things are also really affected by the amount of muscle we have. Growth hormone helps to maintain that muscle, helps to create that protein synthesis. Blood glucose, our muscles store our blood sugar. We don't have enough muscles, we don't have as much glucose storage. Therefore, we're going to have more in our bloodstream, so we're going to affect the ability to create that diabetes. On top of that, type 2 muscle loves to eat up that glycolysis. It loves that anaerobic cycle. When we start getting away from that, we start going towards beta oxidation. That blood sugar is not as necessary. And also frailty. You have good musculature, you can take a hit. You have strong bones, you can take a fall. You're much less likely to have those life-ending or debilitating injuries that are going to affect your activities throughout life. All right, neuromuscular activity. So we have a lot of neurological motor units throughout our system, and the general rule is big muscles have big motor neurons. Big motor neurons innervate the biggest type 2 fibers. So we want to try to use those motor neurons as much as possible. Unfortunately, they don't like to be recruited easily. They only like to be recruited when they have to. We have a general rule of neuromuscular efficiency, which means we only use as much energy and as much recruitment as we absolutely have to. And we won't use any more than we absolutely have to. So Hinderman's size principle is saying that we're going to recruit starting with literally the absolute smallest muscle fiber we have to use, which tends to be those type 1 endurance fibers. And we're only going to recruit up to those big type 2 fibers if you force me to do it. And you're only going to force me to do it when you go for something that requires high force, strength, and power exercises. Now, most of the time, we don't tend to get to that range. We tend to stay down in these endurance fibers. The problem is endurance fibers have no desire to grow. They're going to stay small and weak forever because that is their job, to stay small and weak but last a long time. These guys up here that we're always trying to grow, that we want to have the big muscles, we want to have the big strength, require you to recruit them and force them to grow. But we tend to stay out of that rep range. We tend to go into these high volume, low weight rep ranges that are never going to recruit type 2s. So virtually, your biggest muscle fibers are never going to grow because you've never used them before. All right, so there's a conventional approach for people as they age. And the general rule is, don't overstress your elderly people. I've had tons of training with elderly people. I've worked with chronic condition people. I spent 14 years in medicine. I've trained a numerous amount of people. And the general rules, even by some of the major organizations, is keep them doing low impact things. Do things like walking, swimming, water aerobics. Don't hurt their joints. You know, they're old, they're feeling pain. You don't want to stress that. Focus on endurance things. Focus on flexibility. Just work their cardio system. There's some real problems with this. They're already having sarcopenia. They're already having muscular atrophy. And we're going to encourage methods of fitness that are going to continue to create muscular atrophy. We're going to create more bone and tendon weakness because we're not stressing their bones. Why should their bones grow thicker or stronger? There's no stress on them. We're not causing the deflection, the bending that they need. So when they go to sleep for remodeling, there's no reason to strengthen that bone shaft up. It's already strong enough. There's no reason to strengthen that tendon up. You guys are just trying to stretch it longer. Why bother making it stronger? We need it to be nice and flexy and weak. The problem with this, we're also going to create joint instability. We're not creating any strength or tension around the joint, and we're not doing anything to enhance the strength to hold those tendons. We're also going to create more of that atrophy and sarcopenia because we're not giving them progressive overloading. There's nothing telling them put on heavy weight. It doesn't have to be heavy to us. It has to be heavy to the person working, but you need to create enough weight to create strength. And then of course, body composition. A lot of our body composition comes from working with muscles. There's been a lot of research, some of it's argumentative, but the research is still out there, that cardio doesn't even necessarily have much of an impact on body composition. The reason that the theory on this is, when you do cardio to burn calories on one side, your non-exercise activity throughout the rest of the day will just go down so that you'll save those calories. Meaning, if you spend 500 calories on the treadmill in the morning, the rest of the day when you used to be jittery at your desk, you'll get more chill to save 500 calories throughout the day. Exercise, on the other hand, strength training is going to burn those calories. Those muscles need those fuel, they're going to use them. So there needs to be a general question to the status quo on how we train people. Should we actually be cardio focused? And the other one is, even for not the people that aren't aging, because of the recruitment we need for our neuromuscular activity, is there any reason we should be stressing people to do this 2 second up, 2 second down lifting speed? All right, so we already covered what fast twitch and slow twitch fibers are. So we need to check, why are we doing this slow speed? Well, if we would go faster, we could also encourage things like lifting and speed and shifting and fiber type. If we go for those power reps, we go for quick sub 1 second reps, then we're going to have some of our type 1s are going to actually convert their characteristics to be more like type 2. We can teach them to grow. We can teach them to become anaerobic. We can start to change those characteristics. We can create a lot more hypertrophy because we can start to recruit type 2 fibers that have been neglected. We can also create more things like lactate buffering, which is going to be that lactic acid that builds up. we can start to buffer that out easier, and we can also start to use that lactate as a more of an energy source instead of just a byproduct of, pain. We can create connective tissue changes by stressing and creating more force on the bones, the tendons, and ligaments. They're going to have to start responding in accord, and they're going to have to start increasing their own strength, increasing their own tensiles. So how are we going to get this roll, or how are we going to create this roll in lifting speed, and how are we going to get some more neuromuscular activity? Well, the first thing we have to do is we have to get that recruitment. The recruitment's going to happen by lifting as absolutely fast as possible, which sounds kind of nutty, but I'll cover it more in the next slide. You don't want to create the whole Planet Fitness look of just going, 50 times mile an hour. And we're going to get some good adaptations. Some of the adaptations of creating this higher recruitment speed is you're going to be able to recruit those bigger fibers quicker. Now, on the size principle, it shows that you start with the absolute slowest muscle and you progress. When we first start, it's a slow progression through that, retrospective to our physiology. When you look at someone like an Olympic athlete, they can almost simultaneously recruit all the fibers right away. So every time they work, they're going to get that maximal power right out of the gate, and they're going to have maximal strength. And we're going to also create more things like acetylcholine adaptations, which is pretty much our body's biggest neurotransmitter. We're going to create more receptors. We're going to create more stores. We're going to be able to create a lot more nervous conduction all simultaneously. All right, so how do we do it? The technique is lift as absolutely fast as possible. The trade-off of it is we literally do not want to look like this dude, right? He's up there as a joke. You do not want to look like some crazy one on one of those fail memes that's in there doing insane. When we say lift as fast as possible, we're just telling our body, do what I say, go as hard as you can. The trade-off is our brain is very smart. Our body is very stupid. It adapts because we make it adapt. When we say pick up heavy things, it doesn't know the difference between we're lifting large rocks off of things or we're picking up weights. When we run, it doesn't know the difference between we're running because we're bored and wanting to get on a treadmill or there's literally lions chasing us. It just adapts to survive. So when we tell our brain or we tell our body, lift as hard and fast as possible, that's just creating that neuroconduction from the brain down to create maximal lifting velocity and maximal lifting force. To make sure we don't look like this guy, the answer is simple. Put on enough weight that you can't lift too fast. But you want to tell your body every time you come down for a rep, throw the weight through the roof. It doesn't matter if there's 300 pounds on there and you can barely pick it up. You tell your body, we're going to throw this weight through that roof. We're going to put this up there at crazy speeds. And then when you start pushing it, it's barely moving. It doesn't matter. You just keep telling yourself absolute max velocity, absolute max power. What if you can't even do barbells? It's not a problem. It doesn't matter what your modality is. If you can't do barbells, you go to dumbbells. Well, if you can't do dumbbells, you can do it with cables. Can't do it with cables, you can do it with a structured machine. So it doesn't matter if you've got somebody sitting down in one of the, little bench press machines that's nice and structured. You don't sit down, put on lightweight, and then do 10 nice 1,000, 2, 1,000. You still put on the weight and absolutely max velocity press it. Because if you don't, you're not going to recruit type 2 fibers. You're only just going to sit there and buzz on type 1 fibers the whole time, and you're not going to get that maximal size and hypertrophy. How do we know what kind of rep range and what kind of weight to do? We've got, the NSCA has had this out forever. This is in every strength and conditioning journal since I can remember. What's your goal? If you're trying to do power, you do 50 to 80% of your 1 rep max. You do sets of 2 to 5, and you take 2 to 5 minutes of rest. Why? Because you want to give that neuromuscular system complete time to recover so that it's ready for the proper energy again. Strength, go above 85%. Do reps 2 to 6, take another 2 to 5 minute rest. You're trying to do hypertrophy, you're just trying to get size. You go around 70, 80% of your 1 RM. You do reps in that 8 to 12 range. you do 30 to 90 seconds rest. Then endurance, which is on the bottom, is less than 65%, more than 15 reps, less than 30 seconds rest. This tends to be somewhere in here is where we tend to put a lot of the aging population, do 12, 13, but we tend to put the rep range down 50, 60% and tell them just do super slow controlled things. The unfortunate problem is they're not doing much actual work. They're doing physical activity, but to our physiological response, there's no actual work production, which is defined as the amount of sets times the amount of reps times the amount of weight. So when you actually calculate that total lifting volume, it's just not very high. And it's not recruiting high enough to get the production you want. What are some of the risks? Well, there's obviously a risk of injury, especially if you do improper form or just overexert yourself. If you're putting on too much weight or you're lifting in an improper manner, you have a risk of spraining something, you have a risk of pulling muscles, you have a risk of hurting yourself, and in some cases you have a real risk of damaging bones or, if you drop the weight, really hurting yourself. So how do we minimize risks? Well, as much as it's been said 500 times, warm-ups. However, some of us are getting older, so warm-ups become a lot more important than they used to be. And also, we tend to have like a quick 1-rep warm-up. The more weight you start lifting and the more you start having issues, that also becomes harder. So sometimes you need 2 or 3 progressive warm-up sets before you even start your main sets as you're getting into these larger muscle groups. Make sure you lift with proper form, and if you can't lift with proper form, don't be ashamed to just go to a machine or something where you can have controlled form. If you want to start with high strength velocity training, start where it's safe. Pick the appropriate weight selection. Just because you're supposed to start putting on more weight to push harder doesn't mean you should like double the weight tomorrow. You should just go up progressively, which is the big one, gradual progression. If you're used to, say, benching 135 and you want to start going up, that's fine, but don't jump to 215. If you're at 135, 145 is plenty before we start going up and up. There's no reason to go from I'm used to doing these slow things to throwing on big weights, heavy presses. And the last one, listen to your body. When you go in there, it's like, my shoulder really hurts. Maybe I should take off today. And you're like, I don't want to take off today. I like going to the gym. You should probably take off today, or at least avoid the injured parts or baby them. There's lots of ways around that if you just absolutely won't do it. Like you can do one-sided training and still get good benefits to both sides. You can just ice it and rest. It's not going to be like 3 days and all your gains are gone. So it becomes more and more important to listen to your body as you go on. Conclusion on this, some of the key points. You have the 2 different muscle fiber types. The type 1 is just going to be a very slow endurance-based muscle. Type 2, he likes to grow. He's a big guy. He's a strong guy. He's got no endurance, but he is great on power production. Age is not going to have much impact on those type 1 fibers, but it has a lot of impact on type 2 fibers, and a lot of that is just due to neglect. We're only going to recruit the smallest muscle fibers we can get away with. So if you put yourself in a weight room and tell it to just do these lightweight, slow controlled reps, we're only going to work those lightweight, small controlled muscular fibers. We're going to ignore those big, strong powerhouses because you don't need them. And if we don't need them, we're just going to eventually get rid of them altogether. How do we recruit it? You have to tell yourself, lift fast, lift hard, recruit the type 2 fibers. You have to follow that size principle, and you have to follow that neuromuscular principle of recruit the biggest guys we have to, and the only way you can do that is by telling yourself, this is going to be super heavy, lift it crazy hard and fast. Doesn't matter what weight's on there, you just have to get your body to recruit those fibers. Once you hit in that 6 to 8 range, 5 to 6 to 8 range, you're pretty well where you need to be for that balance of strength and hypertrophy. 6 to 8's a great range because it's the bottom of hypertrophy and it's kind of the top end of strength. And a lot of times that's where we want to be, is building on both. When you have the weight appropriate, where you're pushing as hard as you can't get more than 8, but you can get at least 6, you're right where you need to be. Final recommendations on this: basically, you want to lift fast, lift heavy, lift often. And then the short version is, every time you lift, doesn't matter how old you are, because this size principle applies to everyone across the physiology, at least once you've hit adulthood, once adolescence is over. So you're going to lift with maximal effort no matter what your age is.
So if you're considering testosterone replacement therapy, TRT, why not reach out to one of our doctors at Balance My Hormones, where you can get just a simple advice call for only $59.95. Also, whilst you're watching the channel, don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit the notification bell so you get the latest content from Balance My Hormones. Until next time, this is Mike, and wishing you the best of health.